Hello, my name is Natella Rakhmanina. I am a pediatric HIV specialist from Washington, D.C., and professor at George Washington University, also serving as a senior technical advisor for the Elizabeth Glazier Pediatric AIDS Foundation. I'm thrilled to be here with you today with Meg Doherty, who is next to me. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you very much. I'm Meg Doherty. I work at WHO in Geneva, and I coordinate treatment and care globally and developing the guidelines that we use globally for HIV.
So we are thrilled to have Meg to provide some highlights from CROI and discussions that took place here in regards of the women's health, pregnancy, breastfeeding period. So let me start by asking you, Meg, what are the highlights to you from the discussion, and where is WHO standing right now in regards of safety and antiretroviral treatment and prophylaxis for pregnant and breastfeeding women, especially in the light of Dolutegravir?
Yes, thank you very much. And we've had a couple of really great side meetings and pre-meetings here at CROI discussing especially this particular issue around safety around the use of Dolutegravir in the preconception period. And yesterday there was a very active session and symposium where we discussed this further. So from the WHO's perspective, last year hearing about this potential signal of risk of neural tube defects with the use of Dolutegravir at the periconception period, week 0 to week 8 of pregnancy, it was certainly unexpected and certainly something that caused us all to rethink our approaches to how we look at drugs to be used among women of childbearing potential, but also ensure that we're able to give both the best drug for the mother, the best drug for the child, and figure out how to weigh the risks and the benefits for both the mother and the child. So since that time, there's been a number of efforts globally to follow data to see if we can identify whether or not this risk that was identified, this potential risk that was identified in Botswana, if we've seen it in multiple other studies. And yesterday, Dr. Lynn Matheson gave a really wonderful summary of where we are so far with the data. And we're challenged by the fact that a lot of times research are not done in women who are pregnant, and certainly not done in women who want to become pregnant. So the exact population that we need to be able to identify, is this potential risk real or not, we have a difficulty doing. Where we are so far is we've seen that there are multiple databases, vigilance databases, reporting into drug companies, reporting into the FDA and EMA, and that we're not seeing a huge number of cases. What we're seeing is some sporadic cases. From the Botswana Sapamo study, which is going to be probably the best source of our information, they reported in July, and since then have not reported yet out their final results, and they plan to report out their final results of their prospective surveillance study in the end of April of this year, 2019.
Just in a couple of months.
Just in a couple of months. And the reason being that we're all being very careful now and waiting until we have adequate numbers in a denominator. When you're looking for a rare event like a neural tube defect, it's really important to have enough women to have been exposed to the drug of concern before one makes a final decision. So we're very optimistic that we're going to have enough information to say, is this potential risk real, or is it something that we can consider now as potentially a set of sporadic cases early in that study in Botswana. But overall, it's raised our vision and our view on the fact that we need to do a lot more in terms of research around women. We need to have better reporting, post-market reporting during pregnancy on any kinds of side effects or toxicities to medicines. And certainly in terms of neural tube defects, which are multifactorial, perhaps we should ensure in our low and middle income countries that they have access to prenatal vitamins, access to folic acid, and certainly for women who don't want to become pregnant, that they have options for contraception to avoid pregnancy. All of those challenges have been highlighted in this past year, where we realize women are still not accessing some of the minimal basic services and healthcare services that we hope that they would have had. So from the WHO's perspective, we're going to be reviewing the data again in June of 2019 with a view to update what were called our interim guidelines on the use of dolutegravir. And that's for dolutegravir for all populations, but in particular, we have a few outstanding challenges or questions about how to handle the use of dolutegravir in that early periconception period. Other highlights on dolutegravir would be that we saw the Dolphin 2 study, which also makes it another complicating story to try to explain, because when dolutegravir is used in second and third trimester in pregnancy, we're starting to see very good and rapid viral load declines, which can translate then into better risk reduction and reduction of transmission, onward transmission to the infant. So that was exciting, positive news for dolutegravir in pregnancy.
But it also highlighted that late start of any antiretroviral therapy, both rifavirin and dolutegravir in the study, still did not help to alleviate some adverse birth outcomes because of the late start of the treatment, which I believe WHO has so long already put on the map.
Yeah, and I think, we have made a recommendation since 2015 that all people at any CD4 count should have access to treatment. And not only are we seeing this in women, but we're seeing it across the board that there are too many people, about a third of people who come to disease too late, come to treatment too late. Late in their disease. And so, especially in pregnancy, we want to be able to catch and ensure that they have access to treatment prior to even becoming pregnant or early on in their pregnancy.
Also, like some ethical debates, Meg. Did you enjoy yesterday, especially at the session following Lynn's presentation? I think we had a very good discussion over overall, not beyond HIV. I think the dolutegravir only raised it. Is that your impression, that we're serving a little bit as a catalyst?
Absolutely, and I think that that's what's really been the silver lining, or the great piece of sort of momentum we need to keep moving forward, is around how do we ensure that there's better research among women who are contemplating becoming pregnant, women who are pregnant, that's not an automatic exclusion from clinical trials, that we have trials that can weigh also the risks and the benefits of the person, like the mother who's going to have the treatment, but we also understand the risks and the benefits to the child that would be born of a mother who is taking a certain medicine. And I think hopefully if we can keep this momentum moving, we can also reduce the timeline at which we start to identify some of these challenges and use and safety and acceptability of using drugs during pregnancy. Currently, right now, if a drug is approved for use in the general population, we won't have information about how to use it in pregnancy for 5-10 years or even longer on. And I think it's a sort of a moral imperative that we shrink that, and that we do these research trials, and that we look for those answers early on, and also work with women who are the end users of these drugs and understand what they would like and what will be their needs as they move forward in making choices about drugs.
I'm thrilled also. I know how much you spearhead, along with Martina Penazzato, this work. I'm part of the Pediatric Advisory Working Group, and thrilled to see the new tool, which really puts pregnancy and breastfeeding in women in terms of pediatric drug development on the map, and also formation of the lactating women and pregnant women group that really focuses on those issues. And very, very nice to see WHO lead this effort.
No, I think that piece of work, I agree, and it's a wonderful piece of work. I can't take credit for it, but I certainly, other people in our department at WHO, including Martina, and a wide group of experts in the field have come together to really move the field forward. And I think it's now, as we start with pediatric drugs, to really ensure that we have the drugs being developed in clinical trials faster, and holding those companies, a little bit to the fire to make sure that they respond. We need to do the same for pregnancy, and I think it's we're at a good moment to try to move that forward.
Especially with so many women still getting pregnant in the world and having HIV on the agenda for the health management.
Yes, I think the one thing that we've learned from this as well is that we've spoken to a lot of end user, a lot of civil society networks, a lot of women who are living with HIV. And in general, around the world, women want to have the ability to make some decisions. They want to be able to understand the risks and benefits of using a drug. They want to be able to control their fertility. And so I do think that sometimes when we're treating an infectious disease, we also have to ensure that we are also ensuring that we understand the values, the preferences, the desires of people who will be taking that drug for years or during their lifetimes. Yeah.
So see them more holistically than just focusing on the disease.
Yeah.
I really liked also how the lifespan has been addressed at this meeting, including the plenary this morning, where we don't just look at certain period of time, but we really more and more pediatric and adult presenters are putting the whole lifespan of an individual on the map. And we think about years before, but also, well, many years ahead. And I know you are doing a lot of work also addressing aging populations.
Yes, I think, this year and or 2 or 3 years ago, our WHO consolidated ARV guidelines took on sort of what are the links with aging, but primarily around non-communicable diseases or NCDs. And we've made a first stab at some recommendations about how to better integrate the work of HIV with hypertension and with cardiovascular disease, and also with mental health and with depression. But I think it's much greater piece of work that we need to look to, and coming to the CROI is always very helpful for us because we get the sense of what are the new research out there, what are the new topics, and how can we better represent that in global guidelines and take that from the scientists who are doing the basic scientists and others who are doing such critical work, and then try to bring it to the 37 million people still living with HIV who need access to treatment and to a holistic or integrated life course approach. And I would have to say that's very consistent with how the WHO is moving in a world that's moving towards universal health coverage and primary care programs that actually have packages of care that can care for people across their life course, ensuring that HIV has that specific linkage to all the other services, and that we have a view to making HIV care very person-centered, I think will ensure that we'll have better outcomes over the long term for HIV, better engagement in long-term self-management, viral load suppression, retention, sticking with providers, because like anybody, people would like to be able to get all of your services that you need in a single place to the extent possible, and that you want a provider who can be knowledgeable about these issues. And also we need to address such things as aging, hypertension, depression, because they may have strong effects on being able to maintain a long-term retention in an HIV program and taking those medicines over the long haul. So we're excited to see the next phase of sort of integrating into, in a more meaningful way, into aging issues, non-communicable disease issues, and others as they become more prominent over time.
Thank you, Meg, very much. I really appreciate the perspective, and this were just a summary of some highlights, specifically starting with an issues of safety of antiretroviral drugs throughout the span, as we now finished, of the human life, and not just limited to a certain period of time, starting with women who are currently very high on the agenda, and then finishing up with discussing overall aging population integration of healthcare services. Here are the highlights from CROI 2019 in Seattle, March 2019. Thank you very much.